Welcome, everybody. As you know, every year we do 2 State of the College presentations. We did one last week. We do it a different week and a different day to try to make sure that with faculty and student schedules, people can come if they're willing and able. So thank you for joining us. And I've got a presentation. There'll be some time for some discussion, comments, Q&A at the end, so feel free. We do have mics here. So I'll try to move through this reasonably quickly so we can have some time for discussion. So what I try to do at these is reflect on what's happening at the institution and make sure that we're kind of sharing information about what's going on. I usually pick some kind of theme, and this year my theme is tied to our new vision. We had a process led by David Mash that lots of people participated in to create a new vision for the college. It took about 2 years. We intentionally took a long time because we wanted to have a lot of input. We went through many, many drafts, and this is what the board ended up ratifying with a lot of input from many of you. And I just want to read the first paragraph. As the preeminent institute of contemporary music, Berklee will transform music education and enhance the power of music to better our world. And then it goes on in the last paragraph to say, we will forge new connections among art forms, musical cultures, technologies, and institutions, creating a dynamic global network that fosters innovation, collaboration, and community. So what I'd like to do in the State of the College presentation is talk to you a little bit about how we're trying to do some of these things already and challenge us to think how we could do more of this in the future. As we were going through these drafts, in an earlier draft, we had a phrase in there that I actually really liked that said Berklee will be a vibrant musical ecosystem. And several people in the open forum said, well, what the heck is a vibrant ecosystem? And I thought, well, we don't really have time to explain it now, but I'm going to impose an explanation on you now because I think it's an important concept and it has something to teach us about how as an institution we can become even better. So let's just take a moment on what an ecosystem is. So this is kind of a typical, biology 101 ecosystem, a marshland where you have sun, you have water. The combination of those things with soil leads to grasses. With grasses, you can feed insects and snails and all sorts of smaller creatures. With those things, fish and birds can live. And then in what I think is one of nature's most elegant bargains, some of the plant life agrees to produce seeds wrapped up in delicious fruits in exchange for birds eating the fruit and then depositing the seeds through their own biological processes, often miles away, accompanied with a ration of fertilizer. I mean, how elegant a system is that? That is what an ecosystem is. It's interdependence of living and non-living creatures that creates something that couldn't exist if it were just a monoculture, if you were just growing grasses, for instance. Another good example in the negative, you've probably been reading about the devastation of honeybees in California and how it's very hard for the agricultural system of California to thrive when you don't have honeybees that are pollinating that area. Or closer to home, we've stopped being excited when we see deer in our backyards. Why is that? We don't have wolves and foxes and other predators anymore. So when you pull any group out of the system, let's say you're afraid of bats and you don't have bats, well then you get a lot of mosquitoes. So the system is in balance and there's a certain harmony to the system. Another great example that I learned about with Danilo Perez in Panama, which has a fantastic rainforest and a biodiversity museum, is that in the rainforest, there are these vines that not only will grow on a single tree in a sort of parasitic fashion like ivy or other vines do that we're familiar with, but these vines are so aggressive that they actually reach over and grab other trees and they will choke off a whole forest if there's not some kind of countervailing force. One of the great things about a biodiverse place is that instead of having a whole stand of oak trees or elm trees or pine trees, you have all sorts of different trees, different densities, different sizes, So when big storms come, instead of vibrating in sync, they vibrate polyrhythmically and they strip the vines off. So when a storm comes, it actually helps them strip off these vines that otherwise would kill them. So it's an example of polyrhythms in nature long before Elvin Jones and Max Roach came along. So let's talk a little bit about the Berklee ecosystem. And by definition, we're leaving out certain things. In the illustration of the pond, there are lots of living creatures there that we didn't talk about. So suffice it to say, I'm focusing on some that I think are really critical, in some cases new, important for us to be thinking about. And the biggest and most important ecosystem in the whole institution is this campus. You know, if you think about it, we're an ecosystem within a larger ecosystem. We're sort of like the marshland in a larger geographical area. And one of the innovations we've come up with is if you think of Berklee as like a big farm, we have some institutes that are like gardens within that big farm. And several of them, Africana Studies, American Roots, Berklee Global Jazz, many of these you know about. Last year I talked to you about the Institute for Creative Entrepreneurship, the Berklee Popular Music Institute. One I'm very excited about is the one that Kenny Warner has just started, the Effortless Mastery Institute. What he is focused on is less about developing technique as a musician in the traditional linear way, and more about trying to improve your practice techniques and your performance techniques through allowing yourself to rediscover your original love for music, to silence the self-critical, self-loathing voices that can often become very strong, especially when you come to a place like Berklee, so that you can practice more effectively, perform more effectively, and really enjoy and love what you do. Use your time more efficiently instead of feeling like you have to suffer, liberating yourself to be a better musician. And I think if you haven't read his book, Effortless Mastery, you should do so. It's really a fantastic piece of work, a seminal work, not just for musicians, but all artists. So our institutes are an important part of this ecosystem. Likewise, and I think the single best example that we can all understand of an ecosystem is our summer programs. We have thousands of young people, middle school and high school students, who study here on this campus in the summer. They study everything from the 5-week program, which is a distillation of all the things Berklee does, but they can study songwriting, music business, they can study production. We have this new thing called day sessions for 12 to 15-year-olds because we discovered that a lot of younger students wanted to come, but we're not going to turn them loose in a college dorm. So the day students are just that. They come during the day, their parents pick them up. Lo and behold, we thought it was going to be for people from Boston and the suburbs. We've had families from as far away as Russia and Australia come and vacation in Boston for a week or 2 weeks at a time so that their 13-year-old can go to day sessions. So why is this important? Well, it utilizes a facility that's very expensive at a time when it's underutilized. It generates revenue for the college, it generates employment for the college, but most importantly, 31% of our entering students have come to one of our summer programs. So not only do we know them, but they know us. They know what they're getting into. And I think it's a great system for giving a student a running start on Berklee. And in addition to that, it is surplus generating, so it allows us to infuse more money into our scholarship programs. Enrollment in summer has gone up 41% over the last 12 years. Had a little bit of a hiccup last year with 5-week, but the year before it hit an all-time high of about 1,100 students. And I expect when we get some of the technological issues solved, it will begin growing again. I can't stress how important this program is to us. And so many students who come to Berklee are already excited about the place and have friends and know faculty, so it makes the transition into college that much smoother. So there's 17 different summer programs. Some are in Los Angeles. We're doing one, we're hoping to pioneer one in Guangzhou, China. We have Berklee Latino that takes our clinics on the road. There are a lot of ways that we're trying to extend our reach. Berklee Valencia has summer programs. So to me, that's the simplest illustration of this sort of symbiotic relationship between various parts of the college. Now, City Music you know about. City Music is a program that reaches inner city high school and middle school young people around the country. We're now in 47 different cities, including Vancouver, so we're actually in an international program now, serving 28,000 students. 68 of those students are currently here on full scholarships. In the past, when we admitted students who came from underserved communities who were underprepared for Berklee, they really struggled. In general, these students thrive at Berklee. They're well prepared, they've had theory, they've had some lessons, they've had ensembles, they know what they're getting into, and many of them have come to the Summer 5-Week on full scholarships as well. I think we had 120 or so students at the Summer 5-Week on full scholarships through City Music. Now, the limitation of City Music is we work with after-school programs. And those programs are often fledgling programs themselves. They have leadership changes. They'd like to serve more young people, but they have limits in funding. So we've launched a new program called Amp Up New York City, which is a partnership between the New York City Department of Education, the largest public school system in the United States, a group called Little Kids Rock, and Berklee City Music. And if a teacher volunteers for training, they come to a Saturday training using our techniques, our Pulse learning method, which is an online tool, Little Kids Rock methods. They're given an allocation of about $30,000 of musical instruments, guitars, drums, basses, keyboards, PAs, largely acoustic guitars, that they can use in their classrooms. They're given this training. They become part of a community of teachers who are like-minded. And so far, we've trained 299 certified public school music teachers in New York, and we're serving over 40,000 students with this program. And our goal is to get up to about 600 teachers in New York. But even at the point we are now, we're serving about 69,000 students through these programs. And also, we've just negotiated with the city of Nashville and the city of Philadelphia to allow their teachers to use this Pulse method as well. We now have master's programs. I think you know that we have 4 in Valencia: the contemporary performance, scoring for TV and video games, global entertainment music business, music production technology and innovation. And those programs have been in place for about 3 years now. They're thriving. We have great program directors in each case. We also have 2 brand new master's programs that launched this September here in Boston. A contemporary performance program that's part of the Berklee Global Jazz Institute, so it's very jazz focused, led by Danilo Perez with all of the great teachers he's brought to bear. And then one in music therapy, which is a very interesting and exciting program because it's a low residency program. What we learned is that a lot of working music therapists need a master's, but they don't want to leave their jobs to pursue it. So this program is designed to try to meet their needs. And then finally, our online school has a joint MBA in music business with Southern New Hampshire University, which is an experiment that seems to be working relatively well. And SNHU is an amazing example of a school that no one had ever heard of until they launched their online programs, and has really done an amazing job in that space. Of course, we have the Valencia campus. Applications grew 71% over the last 3 years. The thing I'm most excited about with Valencia is the way it creates a cultural immersion opportunity for North American students who've never been out of the US or Canada. And it helps build relationships. Anyone here has been to Valencia? If you talk to the people who've been, especially the students, the kind of relationships that form, I think, are extraordinary. And it helps us with the challenge we've always faced in Boston, which is with such a big urban school, how do we create micro communities where students can feel like they belong and get to know each other? You know, with 6 or 7 or 8 classes, often a student won't see the same other students over and over again. In Valencia, they can't escape each other. They have a lot of fun, too. I just got an email from Apiwe Bubu. Do you remember him, a South African student? He just bumped into my daughter at a bar in Granada. I just got a text from him. So I guess I'm happy about that. My daughter is studying Spanish, studying abroad in Granada. There in Valencia, she said 3 Berklee students showed up and they met each other. So, you know, they not only learn a lot and get to know each other, they have a lot of fun. Now, on the same premise, we're investigating the possibility of a campus in LA. This is going to take a long time, so let's don't get too excited about it. But the premise is so many of our students who want to pursue careers especially in the intersection of visual media and music, LA is the place to be. We already have an LA internship program, but would it make sense for us to also have a physical campus where we could run programs for high school young people, as we're already doing at Santa Monica High School, an internship program, maybe a semester, quote unquote, abroad in Los Angeles, so that you could, if you're thinking of moving there, you could actually form some relationships before you get there. And we have some, we're in the very early exploratory phases, but there's some opportunities there that might make sense. Continuing, we have the largest online music school in the world by a long shot. And I think sometimes on the physical campus, we underappreciate just how innovative that program is. We now offer 6 Bachelor's of Professional Studies degrees that you can take purely online in these 6 areas. Well, we now have over 600 students who are pursuing a bachelor's purely online. And the interesting news is, there was some fear like, well, will anyone want to come to the physical campus if we have this opportunity online? Well, it turns out that people studying online are a very different demographic than the people who come to the physical campus. One of them is Stefan Lazard, who's the bass player for the Dave Matthews Band. One of them is the songwriter for Adele, who co-wrote Set Fire to the Rain. We have producers, we have established musicians, and we also have a lot of software engineers and technology people who have basement studios and wish they were musicians instead of writing code all day. So it's a very different demographic. The average age is 30 to 45. So I don't think we're cannibalizing the physical campus at all. And in fact, I think it's associating us with great potential sources of hiring for our undergraduates. And again, if we think of this as an ecosystem, the bird could be, the plant could be angry with the bird for eating its fruit. But it enlists the bird to do a service for it by taking its seeds and spreading them. So if we think about these things in a symbiotic way, how do they feed off each other? I think that's a more constructive way to imagine it. So we've had over 30,000 non-degree students, people not pursuing a degree but just taking a course or two, about 8,000 a year, and I'm told the number of degree students is just over 600, not 725. So if you think about it, those 600 students is the size of a small conservatory. So we're already the size of a small conservatory with our online degree granting. Some of you remember Aruj Aftab, who was a student here. She is from Lahore, Pakistan, came to us as a rock guitarist. There are not too many female rock guitarists from Lahore, Pakistan at Berklee or frankly in Lahore. So we found her through the online school, and we were so impressed with her that she got a scholarship to come to Berklee. I just learned that she's working for Condé Nast in New York City and still performing. But think of this not as just a source of revenue or a way to extend our reach or to share our education with other people. Think of this as a global talent search. What if the tens or hundreds of thousands of people we're reaching through online modalities, every single one of them, if we have a way of saying, who is the next person we should try to bring to the physical campus, it just extends our reach so dramatically. Now, MOOCs, you've heard about MOOCs, massive open online courses. Since I presented this last week, these numbers have changed. I think we now have 18 live MOOCs that you can take for free. They're 6-week courses, they're well designed, they're not faculty curated. You don't get a faculty member, it's free. If you sign up for our online school and you pay $1,400 for a course, you get faculty interaction, you get small group sizes, but the MOOCs are free, you don't get that, but you do get a very thorough, sequenced curriculum that will help you learn about a certain area. And we now have some that are in Spanish, we're working on Portuguese MOOCs, we're working on getting translations in Mandarin, because again, we see this as the best way to introduce Berklee to the world, and a great way to share the style of education, the approach to education that we have with other people around the world. And to date, in just 2 years, 1.5 million people have signed up for one of our MOOCs. Not any MOOC, Berklee MOOCs. We have 2 platforms, edX, which is the MIT-Harvard partnership, and the other is Coursera. which is a San Francisco startup that's now run by Rick Levin, the former president of Yale University. Now, not all MOOC students are serious. Some people, I actually signed up for one and never did a single thing. So you have to say, okay, of those 1.5 million, how many are really serious? We know 2 to 5% actually graduate, but I think that understates the impact. But let's assume 10% take it seriously enough to benefit from it. 150,000 people have seriously gotten inside of Berklee teaching pedagogy, and I think that's really important for us. And 337 of them have decided to sign up and pay us to take an online course. That's $500,000 of revenue. So not only does it generate awareness and share our reputation, not only can it be a global talent search for us, it's generating revenue through people who want to sign up for online courses. And now Coursera has a certification program, and we do a 50-50 revenue share with them, and I think we're getting over $100,000 a quarter of revenue from that program. So we went into it as an experiment to see if we could strengthen our reputation, and lo and behold, I think it's going to turn out to be a fairly positive investment that we've made in developing these courses. One other point about MOOCs, we've now gotten some donors like the Inter-American Development Bank to pay for MOOC development in Spanish and Portuguese. So we're actually using it as an opportunity for donors to fund a MOOC in a subject that they're interested in or they believe in. Ben schools. This is an older part of what we've been doing at Berklee, but I think it has a very important and modern application. So BEN stands for Berklee International Network. We have 19 of these BEN partner institutions in 18 different countries, where a student can study the first 2 years of the Berklee curriculum and then transfer that to the college. Now, the beauty of these schools is that it's easier to get into these schools than Berklee. We're now admitting only 29% of our applicants. So some people just don't get admitted to Berklee, but if they study for a year or two at a BEN school, they probably have a good chance of, or they certainly can improve their chances. These schools on average cost about $10,000 instead of $38,000. So they're less expensive. You can go in your home country. Maybe it's less expensive to live there. Maybe you can actually live at home while you go there. You can decide, is a music education of this intensity really what you want to do? So I'm a big believer in these BEN partner schools, and we just had a visit last week. You may have heard from the president of the Central African country of Gabon, who would like for us to help him create a BEN school in Africa. It would be our first in Africa, which could be a much more vital channel for getting African students to Berklee than what we have now. So it's an incredibly exciting system, and we're trying to figure out how we make it work even better for Berklee. But currently we have just under 180 students at the college who came through one of these partners. Let's talk about social media. You know, a lot of people would say, well, how's that part of Berklee? Isn't that just sort of marketing or something we do? But I actually think of it differently. You know, I think a lot of young people their first lesson is taken on YouTube. You know, when you ask students, like, where did you learn to do that? A lot of them will tell you when they were 12 years old, they watched some YouTube video. In fact, some of our most popular YouTube videos are how to play a pentatonic blues solo. So I think social media is a source of music education and exposure to the breadth of music, but it's also the single most important way to share our reputation with the world. You remember last year we had the Indian film composer A.R. Rahman at Symphony Hall for a sold-out show. Fantastic. So the people at that show got treated to an amazing performance by our Berklee Indian Ensemble. In the old days, it would have ended at that, but we created 2 YouTube videos and a third, which was a compilation of the concert, that collectively have generated over 4 million views, almost all in India, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka. How on earth would we be able to promote our reputation in all over India more effectively than that? And when I went to visit India with Clint Valadares and Mirik Vanna, everywhere we went, we were rock stars. People said, wow, I can't believe how many Indian students at Berklee and how talented they are and how amazing your ensemble is, and we love A.R. Rahman. So this model of creating great content that showcases our students as a way of introducing Berklee to people, I think is really, really important. And if you just look at the metrics, just look at the far right, in terms of YouTube views, We're almost at 20 million now. Compare that to Juilliard at 2 million, Oberlin at 600,000, Emerson at 340,000. Plus our own Berklee Online has over 20 million views. Berklee Valencia has several million views. So if we can double down on this, not only do we share Berklee with the world, but I know some students who've gotten gigs because of their high quality YouTube content. So we're helping students create a visual and digital portfolio for themselves when they leave here. So I think we need to figure out how to do more of this better and faster. And we also should be strategic and make sure if we really want to introduce ourselves, let's say in China or Brazil, let's figure out how to have content that would be appealing to people in those countries. The single best source of students for us are alumni who are teachers. If you talk to a student and say, how did you find out about Berklee? Sometimes it's through summer programs, sometimes it's other stuff, but often it's my teacher went to Berklee, my guitar teacher, my drum teacher, my music teacher at school. So how do we make sure alumni know all this amazing stuff we're doing and all the changes that have happened so they can be more excited than ever about referring students to us? And then that creates a healthy ecosystem, because the better our reputation, the more likely the local teacher in Peoria who says, I went to Berklee, is to get students. So it's a healthy, vital system where our reputation can help them and then they can help us. Likewise, we were named the #1 or #2 music school by the Hollywood Reporter. #1 when they surveyed actual working musicians in the Society of Composers and Lyricists, and #2 when they surveyed leaders of music schools. I was actually shocked we made the top 10 for the latter. But, our reputation has really grown, and it's largely built on the success of our alumni. That's why we got ranked #1, because everyone knows how well our alumni are doing. Another cool thing is that all these alumni I'm showing you here employ Berklee students, and many of them say they will only hire Berklee students. The more we can create this kind of vibrant ecosystem where alumni go into the world, have success, and say, I want somebody who can do X, I know how to find that skill set. That is when the system is really humming. If you think about the ecosystem, the sun provides the fuel to that ecosystem. Without the sun, the whole thing shuts down. And part of the fuel for us is fundraising. This shows you a history of our fundraising since 1988. And you'll see this is when we did our first capital campaign and started kind of getting our skills up to a higher level. We raised $54.5 million. This is our second capital campaign right now called Sound Breaking. We're trying to raise $100 million, 50% targeted for scholarships and financial aid. We're on path to do that. Some of you have actually helped us. There's no gift too small. If you want to name a dorm room for your favorite musician or teacher, we'd welcome you to do that. I've named the Thelonious Monk, Alison Krauss, and Allman Brothers rooms. If there's an artist you think is missing that students need to know about, what better way to educate them? So we're raising a bunch of money. I wish we could raise more. You'll see in a minute that if we had more money, we could do even more good things. But that has allowed us to create an endowment that's now over $300 million. Even with the market slipping, we're still over $300 million, which is good. Not great, but good. And that has allowed us to dramatically increase the amount of financial aid and scholarships we offer, more than tripled in the last 8 years. About $44 million of financial aid and scholarship support we're offering this year. So before we get too excited about that, that's great. But this is how much money the families of Berklee students are borrowing. So out here, about 1,600 families, we estimate in 2015 will borrow over $20 million. Now, so that's in one semester. So here's the good news. With $40 million a year, we could have students leave here with no debt. Now, it wouldn't really work that way, because if we had that much money, more students who need to borrow would come. But that would make a huge dent in the problem, $40 million a year. When I got to Berklee, we only were spending $9 million a year on scholarships and financial aid. This year it's $44 million. So we've improved that by $35 million. If we could just get the next $40 million, it would make a sea change in this place. We would attract even better students, They'd stay here, they'd graduate at better rates, they'd feel more excited about the institution, and most importantly, they'd be able to be more successful. Because what I worry about is the student with a lot of debt moving to Brooklyn and trying to make it, and the debt becomes so crushing they have to give up and take a day job before that break comes. We know that there are about 3 to 5 years of what I'm kind of facetiously call aimless wandering when you get out of Berklee. You don't walk into the great gig. Maybe Esperanza Spalding and Charlie Puth accepted. Most people don't stumble into the great opportunity. So I'm proud of the fact that this is the good news. We've actually brought debt down pretty dramatically. So if we keep at it, we should drive that number as close to zero as possible, drive up the amount of scholarship and financial aid we're giving, and the fuel that will let us do that is fundraising. So what are the benefits? I think they're obvious. One benefit of all this is that we have a global laboratory with a third of our students from abroad. And the gestalt change I want to bring about in all of our thinking is not say that Berklee is an American institution that is welcoming to international students, which is fine. I think that's what we were in 1946. Why don't we think of ourselves as a global institution that happens to be located in Boston, and we're interested in talent. We don't care where you come from. We want you here if you have talent, drive, determination, creativity. And should that number be 50%? Maybe even more. The U.S. is a very small piece of the world population, about 5%. So maybe someday we should truly reflect the world's population. We have students from 105 countries, and we already see the great benefits of the interchange that happens from that. Another cool thing about this is the innovation that's fostered. And where's Ken Zolot? I think Ken is here someplace. Ken is a guy who was teaching entrepreneurship at MIT. He stumbled into the vortex of Berklee, and we sucked him in, and for a couple of years he taught for no pay with Panos Panay and the Entrepreneurship Institute. He now has a class he's running at MIT that includes MIT computer scientists and Berklee music therapists and Berklee electronic production and design students. The Berklee students are getting Berklee credit, the MIT students getting MIT credit. I think we're using one of their classrooms, which is nice. We could always use a few more classrooms. And their goal is to develop tools, apps, other ideas that will help people sleep better, feel less stress in their lives, and perform better athletically. So I don't know if they'll come up with any breakthroughs, but for undergraduates, imagine how cool it is to be working with some of the brightest computer scientists in the world, some of our own EPD students, some of our own music therapy students. That's the kind of innovation, and again, we're creating a little ecosystem between MIT and Berklee and between two very different departments at Berklee, and we've already seen how fruitful that collaboration can be. Likewise, we're trying to actually take on this issue of intellectual property and how artists get paid. So through the Institute for Creative Entrepreneurship and Rethink Music, we're trying to weigh into this debate about how the industry works. This is an editorial that David Byrne of the Talking Heads wrote for the New York Times, citing our research. It definitely provoked the industry. We thumped the beehive. I've had several label executives yell at me because they thought it was unfair. I said, hey, all we're saying is it's not transparent. If you want to help and make it more transparent, help us. On the affordability front, we've talked about this a lot, but to the extent that MOOCs, for instance, can help a high school student place out of Harmony 1 or Ear Training 1, that saves them money and time. So how great is that a free course could actually help someone do better at Berklee? Our BIN schools, I've talked extensively about how they can make Berklee less expensive. Our online degree costs 60% less than the degree on the physical campus. Some people are never going to be able to afford the physical campus, and we're probably never going to have enough money to make it free for everyone who needs that kind of support. So the online school, I think, is a key part of that affordability dimension. In the BIN program, of the students who transferred to Berklee, on average, they save $53,000 by doing so. So one of the best living examples that many of us know about of this kind of symbiotic relationship, this ecosystem playing out in student success, is the story of Betty Who. Betty's name is Jess Newham. She's from Australia. She studied classical cello at Interlochen before coming to a Berklee summer program and discovering that she loved pop songwriting and that was the direction she wanted to go. While she was at Berklee, she met Ethan Schiff and Nick Soucy, who've become her management. They started a company called New Torch Management. They now have 8 other clients in addition to Betty Who, and they're doing extremely well. Her band are all people she met at Berklee, including Lauren Fuller on keys, who was a city music student. So you see how the summer program, you see how city music plays into this. Her songwriting team was Claude Kelly, who's an older alum who wrote My Life Would Suck Without You, Party in the USA for Miley Cyrus, Circus for Britney Spears. He's a massive pop songwriter who came to Berklee on a full flute scholarship. And then Peter Thomas, who's also not only a co-writer but the producer. So I would argue that had Jess not met these other people, she might not have had this break. And had she not had this break, these other people might not be doing what they're doing. So it really illustrates how the success of one can generate success for others, and how the ecosystem at work is really strong, because Jess leaves with management. You know, a lot of people show up in Brooklyn or LA and they got nothing going for them other than they go perform at a few places. But she had a management team out working on her behalf from the beginning. Now, let's talk a little bit about the possible merger with the Boston Conservatory. I think in the context of the vision statement, which you remember talks about other art forms, other media, other institutions, and in the context of an ecosystem, I think this makes more sense than viewed in isolation. One of the things that Boston Conservatory is great at is musical theater. That's a huge interest of Berklee students. Our students and faculty have done a heroic job creating opportunities in musical theater, given that we have almost no space to do it and no program other than a minor. We don't have a major. We don't have a real focus on musical theater as an institution. So we know there's a huge amount of interest, and we also know that musically, the scores of musical theater have moved from more the orchestral Phantom of the Opera approach to more the Cyndi Lauper Kinky Boots or Sarah Bareilles Waitress approach. So I think there's a lot of opportunities for our students in writing, performing. There's a lot of technology infused in modern musical theater. So I think the symbiosis between us and the conservatory could be extraordinary with respect to musical theater. They also have a program that was rated the #1 contemporary dance program in the country. And with the advent of the sort of visual dimension of music, you could argue that modern music is musical theater. The lights, the dance, the choreography, the movement, even the people who are not dancing, the costumes, the wardrobe, the stagecraft. And if we're candid with ourselves, when our Berklee students go to an audition, I almost never worry that they can't play the music. But I do worry about what are they going to wear? Do they know how to move? Do they know how to be part of a stage show that has not only to do with music, but has to do with theater? So I think some teaching around movement and dance and choreography and stagecraft might be that little factor that takes an amazing shredding guitar player from producing a YouTube video that a lot of other guitarists want to watch to getting a gig. Oh, amen. So, we have this rich ecosystem. I think a lot of this is working well together. But one of the things we're confronting is that at Berklee, we're very good at doing things in our departments or in our divisions. How do we do more things like, I think music therapy and EPD have led the way with some of the collaborations they've done. How do we challenge ourselves to get more power out of this ecosystem by sharing what we do, by coming up with collaborations that make everyone better. It's more work. You know, the plant has to produce the fruit that makes the bird want to eat the seed. So it takes some work. You have to invest in that. If you just produced a bitter, tasteless seed, the bird's not going to eat it. So how do we promote that symbiosis within Berklee? I think it's absolutely critical, because if we do it, we have an unprecedented moment in time. I don't know if Jeff Shames is still here, but the chairman of the board and I meet almost every week. And Jeff is fond of saying, this is Berklee's time. I don't know, when you were a kid, did you ever play red light, green light? Okay, so you know how it works. Someone turns around and says red light, and that means you can't run, because if they see you running, you have to go back and start over. But if they turn around and say green light, you get to run. And you only get a few windows when you get to run. And right now, we have this amazing window. We're raising more money than ever. We're attracting better students than ever. We're more selected than we've ever been. Our endowment's at an all-time high. We have these amazing partnerships with Ben Schools, Amp Up, City Music. We have an online school that's just unprecedentedly successful in the music space. But we still got so far to go. So my challenge to you and to myself is, this is green light time. What do we do? How do we take advantage of this in a way that propels us to be the place we really want to be? You know, we're great. I love what we are. But if you envision what it could be like if those students didn't have $20,000 or $30,000 or $40,000 worth of debt, if people could afford to stay here, if we could invest in more of these programs and collaborations, it's just mind-boggling to think about what we might be. So again, thank you for coming, and we'll take a few questions or comments. Okay.
Hello? Can you hear me? Okay. Can you talk a little bit more about the LA campus?
Yeah. So right now it's just a glimmer in our eye, but you know, that's how things start. And I think the premise has been, New York is a bus ride away or a train ride away. But LA is a harder place to get to. It's harder to commute back and forth. And wouldn't it be great if students, at a minimum, could spend a semester getting to know LA, maybe continuing towards degrees like film scoring, music business, that in some ways would be very easy to configure in Los Angeles. I also think that programs for younger people in LA could be very important for us, because I think there are some young people who we have found have gone to our LA summer programs who fall in love with Berklee and come here. And then I think you could ask yourself, what might we do with advanced programs? Are there some masters that would be logical to do there? You know, that probably would be phase 2. We're working with a couple of pretty important people. T-Bone Burnett is an ally in this process. Irving Azoff is an ally. Jeff Greenberg, who runs The Village, very famous recording studio. We have a physical site we're looking at. We don't control it. It's a complicated site. LA's a complicated place. So many of you remember when I showed you in like 2005, the first illustration of what this 160 building might look like, and I said, I can promise you we will not build this building, but you can't build any building until you start imagining what it would look like. That's kind of where we are with LA.
Roger, I'm asking this question on behalf of Sahil Warsi, who's an 8th semester jazz composition and performance student here in Boston. I'd like to know what the plans are, if any, for the upgrade of practice facilities in the 150 basement. At the moment, they're run down, missing equipment, and there's inadequate soundproofing, and availability is very limited.
So we're doing a lot of things in 150. Unfortunately, renovating the practice rooms is not among them. But first, let me tell you what we are doing there. We're going to have a much more accessible building where it's easier to get around, especially if you're wheelchair bound or have physical disabilities. We're turning the old cafeteria into a rehearsal space for big band, gospel choir, orchestra. And I think that's going to be a fantastic centrally located rehearsal space. We're creating some new EPD labs. We did create a lot of new practice rooms in the 160 building on purpose, and I think that released some, and those are great ones, and 3 ensemble rooms there. But we understand there's still a lot of unmet facility needs. And one thing I should say as a caution is that there's a lot of excitement that now we can just overrun the Boston Conservatory and use all their spaces. We can't do that because they have students there as well, and their space utilization is sort of equivalent to ours. So we hope there'll be a little bit of synergy from the merger of the 2 institutions, but it's not going to totally solve our problem. For students who don't know about Fordham Road, I know it's not convenient for everyone, but it's a great place with a lot of practice spaces and ensemble rooms. It's underutilized, so in a crunch, it's a good place to go. Other questions?
Hi. Right now, my greatest dream, more than anything else, is to learn how to sing and dance and play bass at the same time. And I'm here as a bass principal, but more than anything else, I want to make the Boston Conservatory merger happen. And I was wondering, what is there to do between now and that being done?
You mean to help make it happen, or to help you sing, dance, and play bass at the same time?
The first one.
Okay. Well, we're doing everything possible to make it happen. And let me tell you what that is. Each board of each institution has to vote to do this, because it's a big momentous decision. And to do that, they want to see a strategic plan that says, what are you going to do that's going to make each institution better? Can we afford to do that? Will it work? How do we harmonize the staffs and the faculties and all that so that everyone gets along happily and we create a healthy ecosystem, not an unhealthy one? So actually, I think a lot of hard work is being done on that. We got a huge amount of input from students, alumni, faculty, and staff through our town meetings and through the website. If you have opinions or ideas about it, let us know. One of the things we're pretty sure we're going to do is ask their dance department to create movement and dance classes for Berklee students who are not dancers with a capital D. And I would say, when I watch a band, if the bass player can't move, it's boring. Even if the bass player's not dancing, you want to see somebody physically embody the music. So we hope we'll have some elective courses like that. One of the things we're exploring is, might we have a January intersession, maybe a 3-credit course over 2 weeks where you can get an intensive download of movement, dance, and choreography for non-dancers. And likewise, maybe their dancers could take a hand percussion for non-percussionists course, which would probably really be helpful to them. So there are a lot of cool ideas of things we might do in those intersession periods or in the summer, but stay tuned.
Thanks.
If it does happen, it's unlikely to happen before June of 2016. So likely the boards would approve it sometime around November, December. It still takes about 6 months to get through all the approvals. So we would expect that the actual merger would be consummated in the summer of 2016.
So the whole thing, if all goes well, would be finalized by next year?
Yeah, by next summer. And we would hope to, one of the things we're doing in the strategic planning is saying, what could be the quote-unquote low-hanging fruit so that current Berklee and Boston Conservatory students immediately feel some benefit. At the same time, we don't want to rush this. They have a 148-year-old history. They do what they do really well. We don't want to kind of walk in and say, why don't you do these other things? And likewise. So we have to make sure we take care of business and we're serving our current students the way they deserve to be served. But we're going to try to come up with some quick wins and then have a longer view of how we might do the integration to maybe even get some deeper collaborations. The best example, I think, is this course we have where we have an ensemble led by Gus Sebring that's playing the music of film scoring students who are conducting their cues with this orchestra, and it's being recorded by an MP&E class. So the engineers are learning to record an orchestra, the orchestra is learning to sight read and play to a click track for visual media, and the film scoring students get immediate feedback. If you wrote a note that an oboe can't play, you're going to have to fix that. So the pressure, I think, to deliver a score that's thoughtful is greater, so everyone benefits. And again, that to me is a little ecosystem. So might there be similar things we could do with the conservatory, with Berklee composition students, maybe some of their orchestral players, some of our engineers, producers, some of their dancers? Imagine every time we do a performance, it seems like we ought to be thinking about how their dance students might be part of it. Good.
Thank you so much for all your hard work to make
Yep.
this happen.
Well, thank you.
Hi, if you have a full tuition scholarship and you're studying on the Boston campus, can you use that scholarship to study in Valencia?
Yes, you
Okay.
can. And we actually got a grant from Santander Bank to give a small stipend to students who want to study in Valencia. I'm not quite sure how this works. It helps defray some of the costs of transportation. Someone smarter than I will can tell you more about that as well. But yeah, the scholarship continues in Valencia.
Are there, excuse me, are there any opportunities for currently enrolled Berklee students to work with or volunteer for city music?
Good question. Does someone here know the answer to that?
Yes.
Speak up. Yes. How do they do that, David? See David, and he'll give you the email for Lee Whitmore. But that's a great question, and we do have a lot of students volunteering not only with City Music, but doing great work in the community. So if you're interested, I'm sure we can put you to work.
Okay, thank you.
Let's do one more, if there is one, and then I'll let you go.
Hi, thank you so much for speaking today. I have sort of a professional question.
Okay.
I work at the Berklee Fund, and we fundraise for student needs. One of them is scholarship funds. And one of the things I will hear in objection to giving to the Berklee Fund is that they have a lot of student debt, or they didn't get a scholarship, so why should they give? And I have my own responses as a student here, but I was wondering, as the president of Berklee, how would you respond to that objection?
Well, let me first say that when I was a college student, I set up the first program like that for my college to call alumni and ask for money. So I've had some of the good calls and a few of those hostile calls from people who never want to hear from you again. I think what I would first say is if someone has debt, I would say we totally get that. And so what we're asking you to do, obviously you have to pay off your debt, you have to earn a living. But any gift, no matter how small, matters. Even a $10 gift, whatever it costs you for 3 or 4 cappuccinos, that would be great, just as a starting point. If you don't feel capable of doing that, that's fine. We love you. We want you to stay involved and know about Berklee. And let me tell you what we're doing at Berklee that's exciting. But I think the key is to try to get people in a philanthropic mindset. We know that the average young alum is not going to give us $1 million. But if they give us 10, when I'm talking to the person who I'm hoping will give us $1 million, it helps when the current alumni are committed and involved. So I would say focus on participation and not amount. And if someone really can't do anything, then I think you thank them and tell them we wish them all the best.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you all for coming, and let's go at it.